Greece's parliament has narrowly passed an austerity bill. This moves the country a step closer to getting more bailout funds from the European Union and other lenders.
Fierce clashes and running battles have broken out between anti-austerity protesters and police in the Greek capital on the second day of a 48-hour nationwide strike. The violence erupted shortly after thousands of demonstrators flooded into the main square as MPs prepared to vote on tough new belt-tightening measures. But the parliamentary session was briefly interrupted when parliament workers went on strike and opposition lawmakers walked out of the chamber in protest. Outside Parliament, loud booms rang out as protesters hurled petrol bombs and police responded with tear gas and stun grenades. Despite opposition from the government's coalition partner, Parliament is still expected later to vote for €13.5 billion of austerity measures, including tax rises and pension cuts.
These cuts have been dictated by Europe as the price for avoiding national bankruptcy and an ejection from the euro. They're being imposed on an economy not in recession, but in a deep depression. These protests happen so often now, it's become easy to dismiss them. But this really may be a society teetering on the edge of social breakdown. And that's before it gets hit with this latest round of austerity.
While inside the building, the Greek leader made his case for the necessity of more austerity.
If Greece perseveres, it will exit the crisis. It will win this bet. I ask that we achieve this expectation here, all of us together, everyone. Together we can do it.
But his view wasn't shared by the opposition.
If these measures are passed today, which will bring a recession of 7% in 2013, it is very possible that by February, at the latest, you will be forced to bring in new measures because the expenditure will have derailed.
In the end, the proposed cuts were passed, but by a majority of just 3. This is Greece's fourth austerity package in 3 years. It's meant to close the nation's budget deficit, lower its huge debt burden and make its economy more competitive. But the level of resistance on the street is a reminder that implementing the measures will be far from straightforward.
They're necessary for Greece to get the next €31 billion bailout tranche from the EU and IMF. But even in Parliament, there's opposition.
We're not going anywhere with these measures. All this is doing is increasing poverty in our country.
But with more austerity in the short term, salaries are set to go down. It will most likely slow the economy further as consumption falls. Greece's GDP is expected to shrink by more than 4% next year. And the unemployment rate is expected to reach almost a quarter of the active population.
We're tired of this. Our patience has reached its limit. All we can do is fight and see what happens.
The country's debt level is also expected to skyrocket to nearly 190% of GDP. Next Monday, the EU will say whether it grants the expected €31.5 billion to Greece. Finance ministers will also decide whether to grant the country 2 more years to fulfill its targets.
The government of Antonis Samaras insists this is the only way forward and that these cuts will be the last cuts and that without a root and branch reform of the Greek economy, growth and an end to the calamitous debt crisis of this country will never come.